Hey, this is Hannah Fierman. I'm an actor, director, and producer, mostly in horror movies. I'm best known for my role as the succubus in VHS and the spin-off feature Siren. I've done shows like Creepshow and Dynasty, Vampire Diaries, for the people that don't like the hardcore horror stuff. And I'm here doing a podcast, These Fine People, for the second time, and I'm excited to be here.
Welcome to Scratch, Claw, Push, a podcast about artists clawing out a place for themselves in the world. I'm Billy Joe Cones.
And I'm Brendan Duke. Let's go. Thanks. Yeah, as you mentioned, we actually talked on a previous podcast, which we had to take down. But yeah, you were just getting started in your journey as a featured film director. You'd done a few shorts, if I recall, at the time. This is like back during the pandemic. And you just recently completed a feature film, correct?
Yes. Well, okay, so you're talking about Dark Circles.
That is correct.
It's the first feature-length feature that I've done. I did a segment of an anthology, which technically is a feature, but I only wrote and directed one of the segments. And that's called Dead by Midnight, Whites Who Kill, and that is already out. It's at Target and some other places. And so Dark Circles, the actual feature-length feature narrative that I directed, is almost completely done. Like, everything is done. We just have to assemble it all. I got to get my color from my colorist, and he's got to mail it. So it's going to take a minute to get to my editor. But I had some free time now, and I'm so stoked about it that I wanted to get out there and start sharing it with people. We haven't, we don't have distribution yet because we haven't sent out any screeners or started marketing it yet. But we're thinking probably by December or early next year it should be out.
So when you started as an actor, did you ever think that you would be directing and producing?
Yeah, I always thought I probably would. And way back in the day, I've been acting in film since the 90s in Atlanta. And so I was always so inspired by the wealth of talent that was in the area. And I always thought that they were undervalued because of where they were from. So my dream was to act as long as I possibly could and then start a production company and bring more production to Atlanta and eventually move back to Atlanta. And luckily, I didn't have to, because like Shay Griffiths, she did it and brought Hollywood to Georgia as it should be. And I'm really excited about how many of my friends are working as much as they should and, showing off the skills that I always knew they had.
Yeah, you come from that group I like to call like the OGs of Atlanta film. A lot of them, we just spoke to Raymond Carr, who worked with the Zombie Cat crew from back in the day. Like when I first came up, I came up to Atlanta like in the early 2000s and started doing some short films back then. And there was that core crew who was doing stuff then. And now, again, with a lot of them, like when Hollywood did finally come to town, they'd already put in the work. And now you see them like working on any big, a lot of big productions that come to Atlanta, you see a lot of their names on them. And it's like those crew that were putting in the work, and that when Hollywood came to town, they were ready.
Yeah. It's super fun to see. I saw Raymond on Eric, the extremely popular show about Jim Henson's life, and I was just like, oh, that's so perfect. And I got a little recording of it. I was so excited to see him. And I was just watching this Nicolas Cage horror movie with big crazy puppets, and I can't remember the name of it.
I was going to say, Willy's Wonderland.
I think so, yeah. And then Molly Coffey was the production designer on it, and I'm just like, yeah, and I was just like, oh, I kind of see it now. And it's super fun. It's super fun to see that happen, and just see how your buddies pop up on shows when you're least expecting it.
Did you always know you wanted to do horror specifically, or did you just kind of fall into that genre? I
fell into it. I think it mostly stems from the fact that I'm OG and all of my friends were making indies, and indies lend themselves to horror because it's the bubble that never pops. And so my friends cast me in their independent films, and it made me respect the genre a lot more. And now I'm a fan, but back in the day, I couldn't watch anything scary. I would have terrible dreams and sleep with the lights on, or just not sleep at all. But now I was watching, what was I watching? Hellraiser, the original. Do not tell Doug Bradley. I worked with him a few times recently. I fell asleep. During the original Hellraiser, and I'm like, who am I? What have I become? You know? And
they got their tolerance built up now, where it's just like.
Well, and then did you have weird dreams after you fell asleep watching Hellraiser?
I don't remember, but probably. Yeah, I probably woke up like, and it was still going on, and the nightmare continued.
Well, like one of the first big things, or the things that kind of got you known, as you mentioned at the top, was VHS, and that's pretty freaking gnarly. You know,
yeah.
The scene that you did.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Was that like one of your first ones that like, where you got to go that hard into the horror thing, or were you kind of easing your way into it?
Oh, okay. Well, I eased my way into it a little bit. I had done some horror shorts. And do you remember Push Push? I think there still is Push Push Theater.
I know of them. They've been around for a long time. So
yeah. Well, they were doing these shorts, and it was all of the old guys. Like it was David Bruckner did one, Dan Bush did one, and I was in one of them too. And so I did this short called. Oh my goodness, it was so long ago. Oh my gosh.
This is the one where we probably have to go to IMDb because
what was it called? It was Girl on Ice. It was called Girl on Ice, and I don't think it's on IMDb. And I play this character that wakes up in a bathtub full of ice with her kidneys removed. And we shot it in the Claremont back when the Claremont was super nasty, and it was so much fun. And my character turned out to be superhuman, and they shouldn't have messed with her. Yeah, story of my acting career. And so she gets up without kidneys and just massacres everybody. And it was actually a really good short, and I haven't been able to find it again. The director was Maxwell Guberman, and I don't think he's a filmmaker anymore. So that was a horror thing that I did. And I think that is the only horror thing that I had done before VHS. I think so. Yeah. And then I was just like, fuck it. You know, I was just like, I want to work with David, and, you know, I guess I'll be a naked demon. And I was like, what the hell? Nobody will see this.
And
next thing you know, it follows you everywhere.
Yeah. It's great. It's been a blessing, mostly a blessing.
And you even got to do Siren. Was that a sequel or a prequel? It's been forever since I've seen it. So
it was a prequel.
Okay, that's what I wanted to say. It was a prequel, but I didn't want to get it wrong, so I wanted to confer with you before just declaring it. So like you even got to revisit that character because it I guess people were like, let's do some more.
Yeah, people still ask me about it. They're like, when's the third one going to be? And I was just like, I'm too old for this. I don't want to run around naked. I'll pass the torch. No, I don't know. I might if it was directed by.
Maybe you can direct the next one, like when you
see, that would
there's
be.
There's got to be more where she came from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want a world of succubuses. I don't know how to say it, but yeah, I want to see the circle of hell where they're from, with just like incubuses and everything. Just let's get crazy.
You are the second naked demon horror creature we've had, so
Yes. The first one was a dude, so
yeah.
Who was it?
Jay Peterson. He was in the was it The Conjuring? 3, The Devil Made Me Do It.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen Jay Peterson, you know him. He's huge. He's like 6'7", 300 pounds. Like he used to have like really long hair and like this Viking beard. Like he shaved the beard for the movie, but like he's one of those guys you can't miss him.
Yeah, I think I do know him. Was he on The Walking Dead?
I think
Might have been. I don't know. Like I feel like that show's been in Atlanta so long. I feel like anybody that's been working here has probably been on that show at some point. So I can't say that maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. He's also one of those people like he's been around and he's done a lot of things. So it's kind of hard to keep track of it all, but possibly.
That's cool.
But he was actually did this thing where he was talking about, I guess, like, shaving everything, I guess, from like his cheeks down and like having to get like the full body makeup. So like you're actually the second person to have to, bear it all on screen. You're and Jay, I'm pretty sure they had to do a lot more makeup for him.
Cheeks down. That's funny.
Yeah. Like these cheeks. I mean, so. So yeah, like it sounds like you caught the acting bug early, and I remember like on our previous show, you said you were always kind of like making up stories and kind of doing this from an early age. So it seems like you already kind of had like that direction. I was like, okay, you go over here and you do this, and you like. So did you always know you wanted to make that leap to director, and you're just kind of waiting for your moment, or was it kind of like? Or was it kind of like maybe you kind of said, well, for a minute you went into the acting thing and I'm just going to do this. So like, was it always kind of working your way up to it, or did you kind of forget about it and then come back to it?
I think I was always working my way up to it. Because like I said in the other podcast, I just wanted to be a storyteller, and any way I can do that is fun for me. And I wanted to make sure that I felt like I was ready. And I feel like a lot of people jump into it too soon and they're not ready. And so they don't create the product that they had in their mind, and then they get disheartened. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that I had, for example, with Dead by Midnight, Whites Who Kill, the first time I directed, I wanted it to be something that I had created, something that I'd written. I wrote it with my ex-husband, Josh Wilcox. And, but I came up with the original story, and I felt more comfortable directing that because it was my original idea. And after that, I probably aged a couple of years in those 3 days of filming. But then I realized that, you know what, this is fun. This is something I want to do, and I think I can handle perhaps taking on other people's screenplays and comfortably and enthusiastically direct it with confidence. Yeah.
So, like going through like having kind of gained some of that notoriety kind of like early on, and I know like I've seen you kind of like out there at a lot of the cons. Is that something that like, are you kind of like someone who's kind of really already into that, and it's like this is like now you have an excuse to kind of get out there and be it, or are you more like, oh man, I kind of have to, like, because I know certain different people have different relationships with that, where some people you can tell they really love to do it, and then other people's like, I'm kind of doing this for my job. But like which like where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, I had never been to a convention before that. I had popped by Dragon Con whenever I had a movie screening in it. But I get anxiety around a lot of large crowds, and I refused to pay for a ticket. So, so the first convention that I did as a guest, I didn't know what was going on. And for some reason, my manager didn't tell me. But so I show up to this convention in South Carolina, and with just my headshots. And she was like, bring your pictures. And I was like, okay, these are the only pictures I have. So I just brought my headshots, and everybody's like, no, these are not the pictures. Where's your work? And I was like, on the internet. So half of that convention, well, the first half of the first day of that convention, I didn't have any 8x10s except for my headshots. And
mistake.
I was embarrassed. But that was an opportunity for me to go and talk to everybody else. And I made a lifelong friend with Paul T. Taylor, who played Pinhead in Hellraiser Judgment. And I've cast him. I cast him in a feature I produced, which we can get to, Bunker Heights, and then he is acting with me in a feature that we're doing in St. Louis in August. Actually, we're starting in 2 weeks almost, and so it was still absolutely worth it, and I still had a super fun time. But yeah, it was embarrassing, and one of the guys who had a booth there, he ran and made me some 8x10s. He just did it all for me and didn't even charge me for them. It was like incredibly sweet. And yeah, it was a good time. But it was embarrassing. And so after that, I really like conventions. When I'm a guest and I have something to do, I particularly like horror conventions because I don't have to explain myself or who I am. And, people give me money and tell me I'm great. Like, what's not to like?
We all want that.
Anybody.
That's the dream. Just give me money and tell me how awesome I am. I dream about that, but I'm glad that you are there.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet gig. I was so surprised that anybody would want my autograph, but it brought them joy, and so I was just like, okay, let's do this.
So I want to ask, so going back to your production, and then I know we'll transition to talking about the other films, but was there ever a time, or how, I guess my question is always, how did producing your first big thing change your perspective on the industry or make you feel differently about yourself?
Me actively being the producer?
Yeah, like you being the one behind, not just, I'm going to act in somebody else's project, or, I've taken on a role that someone else has given me, but like spearheading your own thing. Like, how has that changed how you view the industry or yourself?
There's a lot of egos that are involved and a lot of ways to hurt feelings when you're in that position.
Mm.
And so that's been something that I used to despise when other people did it to me. But then I would find myself doing it like, oh gosh, there's just...
I guess, what do you mean by that?
I guess I mean like, I don't know, people would want to be in it, or they'd have a great idea that you'd have to shoot down, or, just like a certain diplomacy that goes into it that it was not something that I ever had to really develop until I produced, until I had, other people's talent and egos and, feelings in my hands. It's a very tricky business, producing.
Like, you got to be a bit of a politician, right? Because like now you're kind of having to like, okay, well, if you come over here, this is like, you've got to kind of wrangle all the egos and kind of get like, like explain to them like how this is going to be good for you if you're only in this movie for like 5 minutes, or, like if you, or whatever. I'm sure there's like this, it's stuff that like, if it's being done to you, you can say, well, this is kind of dishonest and kind of shady. But then you get on the other side, it's like, well, on one hand, I don't want to lie to people, but maybe you're kind of having to shade it in just such a way, like, but you've got to get it done.
Precisely. Yeah. It's exactly like you said, like, it's not lying. It's just being gentle and kind, but also getting the best product that you possibly can for your director. Yeah. Like, I don't know, friends that'll, they want to be in it, and I'll just be like, we can't afford you. We literally can't. Or, and then it's like, well, you paid for that guy. And it's just like, well, he's more famous than you, dude. It's just like,
I mean, sometimes you just got to tell people like, look, man, it's like, yeah, I'd love to have you in this, but this guy is going to, I've literally heard stories over the last few years where people will be like, someone won out a part because they had more followers on Instagram. It's like stuff like that. And unfortunately, when you're in that producer seat, as you kind of have to start looking at stuff like that. So you got to get a little cold-blooded about it.
it's really difficult to get it done without being a little bit calculating. And mostly that didn't happen very much on Bunker Heights, which is a film that I produced with my friends, because I knew who we wanted to cast. And so it was way more straightforward, working with people that I knew I wanted to work with locations, with people I knew I wanted to work with. But like with post-production for Dark Circles, I had to step in and produce because my producers, they just kind of went away and started doing other projects and dropped the ball, and I had to pick it up in no better way to say it. And so then it was just like we had no money, so it was just really tricky. So somebody would reach out and be like, I'll do it for free. And I would vet, the person with all the other producers, and we would agree that, okay, we'll give this person a shot. But then they would disappear into the wilderness for 9 months. And we couldn't get in contact with the guy. So then I had to replace that person. And then that person comes back out of the wilderness and is just like, no, I was still going to do it. And it's just like, we couldn't wait around for you, even though you were doing it for free. And we really appreciate it. Like, it was a lot of that. I don't know. This is kind of negative, but I'm not meaning it for it to be. I don't particularly like producing unless I have just like no outside influence from the money or other producers that are involved. If it's just under my control, then producing's fun, but it isn't when everybody has an opinion.
Well, it seems like there's this reality that you're hitting on of the industry, which is no matter what and it goes to, young actors who are sort of entitled, don't understand this yet, or maybe even young people who are just in the industry altogether, that the production is not about you and your singular piece of it. It's always about the whole, right? So it's always about, hey, we have all these locations lined up, we have all these people in place. And this even happens to celebrities, that if you're not available during that time, if something comes up all of a sudden, you're out, because it is a giant moving organism that is not ever dependent on one person, right?
Yes, precisely. It takes a village. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, some people that, who are best for the part and they can't make themselves available for it, don't get cast sometimes,
There's also lots of stories out there where you hear about some like with Hugh Jackman, like playing Wolverine. He got that part because the guy they initially offered it to just decided he didn't want to do it, like right around the last minute, and he was like one of the alternates. And they offered it to like Russell Crowe, and I think Russell Crowe actually recommended him for it. But like Hugh Jackman was this guy off doing like musical theater, and then they're like, okay, we want you to come play this like hairy mutant who has like claws and goes and like mutilates people. But I mean, and then now that's what he's known for. And it was literally just because like they had cast a more famous guy, and for whatever reason, when the time came, he couldn't do it, and the rest is history. And
yeah,
that's kind of how it is.
They really lucked out.
Yeah, I mean, and do you find like that's kind of like a muscle that's gotten easier to flex, kind of like now that you've done it a few times? Like, where I'm sure the first few times you have to do it, you're like, oh God, why do I have to do this? Whereas in maybe as you've kind of come along now, you're just like, okay, got to make this decision.
I don't know. It depends, because I had one actor that I'd worked with, and it was for an older character, and his health declined, and he couldn't do it. And I was so heartbroken. I wanted to cut the entire character out, So yeah, I guess it's scenario by scenario. But we did end up, we cast Paul Taylor in the role, and my buddy, and he was amazing. And so I'm glad we didn't change the script. Yeah, I don't think it gets easier. I don't know.
So as an actor, when you are looking at projects that you might be a part of, and you're the one having to decide, like, am I going to take this opportunity, or am I going to turn it down like Russell Crowe or whatever? Have you have you sort of developed your instinct there, or how do you end up deciding what you feel like is a good fit, or what is going to, do you have sort of a sixth sense at this point of like what is going to actually keep you on your journey where you want to be going?
I do when it's well, most of my work comes from people reaching out to me directly or via my agent for me directly. I don't get cast nearly as frequently from just blind auditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I have the opportunity to read the script. If the script isn't good, don't do it. It's the, you know, it's the first thing. If it's, you know, if it's a flexible script and, you know, it's good enough for you to put in the effort to make suggestions and they're responsive, maybe. But then you go and you can look up all of the other people's, I mean, all of the other work that these people have done. And if they have a certain quality, then, you know, yay, that's a check. But, yeah, it's pretty obvious, I think, from the beginning, whether or not it's going to be worth your time. I mean, like if they have enough organization to make it union, you know, it's usually a really good sign and stuff like that. Also, I tend to work with the same people over and over and over again. And recently I did make a mistake by trusting a producer, and I went to shoot this anthology, and I showed up and it was a cluster cuss. It was atrocious, you know, but usually I've been around long enough to know when it's when I see a red flag, you know, just don't do it. It's because it's going to break your heart later on, you know.
That actually was going to be my next question. Have you, now that I guess if you've been doing this for a while, you like, what are some of those red flags you look out for when you're like, this would be cool, but like,
Yeah.
what are those things that you're seeing? Like that you've, like if you were going to like give advice to like another actor coming up, okay, like this is what you need to watch out for.
Indiegogos, you know, keep an eye out for those. They're usually crap. Or, you know, just like look at the major players involved and see what they consider good, or good enough to show the world. And, you know, I personally think, okay, you got to build a reel, you got to build a portfolio for yourself, but not at the cost of your time, your energy, and your artistic integrity. It's just not worth it. I mean, I've made a lot of crap movies, but I like my character in most of them. I like, you know, my work in most of them. And, you know, it's not always going to be perfect, but I think erring on the side of declining is usually a good idea.
So when you're young and coming up and you're declining things because you're like, nope, not good enough and whatever, I mean, besides going to acting class, which everybody will say is, you know, keep going to acting class, right? Keep developing your skills. What else were you doing when you were in that position of trying to build your way up?
Well, it was different back then. You know, not everything could be shown to the world so easily. It was a different time. So I could make mistakes and no one would ever see them. Mm-hmm. Versus now, people just throw it up on YouTube, or, you know, I don't know, Tubi picks up some things that I think are suspect. But I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Well, no, I mean, like, what else were you doing in the meantime? Because, you know, like, obviously people get waitressing jobs, or people, you know, have, you know, work on set or whatever they do to kind of keep it going. And I think you know, I was a on-camera actor and stage actor back in Minnesota, and I moved here, and then everything shut down. And, you know, I spent years having a waitressing job and then doing the acting stuff. And there's so much shame around the day job that I think like normalizing the reality of you need to support yourself is really important. And so I guess I'm just curious, you know, what your advice is from past or now for people who are trying to get into this and want to do it, but like not everybody has mommy and daddy's money to support them. Not everybody has spousal support. So for those people who don't, what would you say to them about supporting yourself and doing it in a way without shame?
Well, I mean, there's no shame in making money and making a living. I waitressed. I was a flight attendant for a while. That was a little too time consuming, but it was fun. What did I do? I organized hedge fund conferences in New York City. What else? What else did I do? I had so many jobs. Yeah. Oh, wow. I recommend doing something, getting some sort of degree, perhaps like some sort of nurse-like thing that you can get in a year where you could perhaps be a set medic, so you could observe and learn and make money. Like, I think that's a really good idea. Or, doing something you could do remotely, or like being a traveling nurse of some sort or something like that, where you can actually make a living, feel good about it, and be comfortable and have the flexibility to pursue projects that inspire you.
That's there was a thing. Yeah. I'm sorry, but there was a thing back in the day. The Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was coming up, he had a successful construction company, so he could afford to say no to a lot of stuff because he already had that income coming in. And I feel like, and also more and more actors nowadays, you see them getting into businesses on the side. Like now it's gotten real trendy for everybody to have like their own brand of vodka or gin or bourbon or whatever.
Or just their own branding company.
Yeah. Or like you got like Jason Momoa on Instagram hawking for like 3 or 4 different companies. He's got like Harley Davidson, So Ill. Like, I feel like it's become much more acceptable for actors to kind of embrace the capitalism side of it, where they're just like, it's like, I can go out and make this money, where now I'm not having to literally just jump at anything that anybody puts in front of me.
That's what you want. You want that freedom. You need to be able to take a break when you need it. It's important. There's no shame in it.
I mean, Nicolas Cage went bankrupt and then just took any movie he could and just trusted that like he was Nicolas fucking Cage and he could do anything, right? Like, and he's had such a comeback. Like, I'm like all about it. So
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I'll watch anything that he's in.
Same.
Well, it's also, he's like one of the, like, I just feel like he's one of those guys, like, he's just going to fucking go for it, whatever it is. It's like, he doesn't care. He's like, he's going to be that guy. Like, you give him something, he's going to try and make a meal of it. And even if he fails, it's still going to be entertaining because he's just that guy.
Yeah, he still has that hunger. It's wonderful to watch. You never feel like you're watching somebody working. It's never dull. It never seems.
He's not going to phone it in. It's not like, there's certain actors you can tell like they're just doing that movie for a paycheck, and they're just kind of like, okay, I'm going to hear, like, they're like, okay, when's lunch? Like they're just barely putting in an effort. And then you got like a guy like Cage who's just like, okay, what can I bring to the set today?
Well, have you seen Long Legs yet?
No,
but I want to.
I haven't either. Yeah, I want to too.
Everybody's like saying this is like the best, like suspense horror thing since like Silence of the Lambs. So I'm trying to not get my hopes up too much, but I definitely want to check it out.
Fingers crossed. I was going to say, you can do it for the paycheck and then also be like, okay, I know that this is not my best, project ever, not going to win me any Oscars, but I'm going to go in and have fun. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
I've been there with certain stage shows.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, if you had jobs like that where you're not like, okay, I know this is probably not going to be that great, but I still want to have fun. It's like, I'm here, I might as well play.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm always having fun with it. I don't see, I mean, I love acting, acting's fun. So yeah, I mean, not that I thought it wasn't going to be good. I can't think of an example when I was just like, oh, this is going to suck, but I'm going to do it. It's going to be fun. Unless like I wasn't certain it was going to be amazing, but I got to work with all my buddies. I mean, that's happened. That I have done.
Is there a certain type of role that you like? Do you ever want to branch out from the horror genre? And are there certain types of roles that you would still really love to play?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still do everything, just nobody notices.
Yeah, I was saying, like, I think, but yeah, I think I said was joking before we came on. Like, you've got an IMDb page like longer than my arm, so it seems like you're always working on something. You've got, I think I was checking, like your actor credits are like 57 credits, and that's
Wow.
probably just what's put up there. And you've got 15 upcoming, so
Yeah.
it sounds like you keep it going.
Yeah. I would like to do more comedy. Comedy's fun. And yeah, I mean, I like to be well-rounded artistically. I'm not like, well, okay, so horror is not what the word it used to be. Like, horror is, I mean, there's an element of horror in most good movies, you know, and now vampires are for kids, you know, so it's like,
Sparkly vampires.
what is horror, you know? But yeah, I mean, shoot, I'll do anything as long as it's well written.
I mean, you could be on What We Do in the Shadows and that'd be vampire comedy.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, that was kind of what I was just thinking. Like, I played on Toast of London with Matt Berry, and I played somebody who was had an allergy that manifested as a Cockney demon.
Wait, were you on Toast of Hollywood or Toast of Tinseltown? Sorry, Toast of London.
Just Toast of London. I would love to do Toast of Tinseltown. I'm not sure if that's still going on, but oh man, I had so much fun. It was great.
It's so good. It's such a good show. I think more people should watch that show personally.
I definitely. Yeah, huh?
Now I was thinking, well, some of like the best stuff, like in the last few years, like you get where people start kind of messing with the genre, or like it's been going for a while. Like you get like again like the horror comedy of something like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is like really kind of like a send up of the whole horror genre, or then you get like something like a Hot Fuzz, which is like an action comedy that's clearly on one hand knows when to just go full throttle with the action, but is also spoofing like every major action movie that's come along in the last 20 years. So like it sounds like you'd be totally game to do something like that, where you kind of really have that flexibility to, you can still kind of dip into some of the stuff you've done before, but then have a chance to kind of branch out into something new at the same time. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I'm curious, like, as you're going out there now and you're starting to make more of your own stuff, I guess just like, how has that like affected like your acting? Is like that, or you tend to be maybe a little more forgiving of whatever your directors or producers ask now, having seen that side of it? Or are you still just kind of like when you're in that mode, it's like, I still got to do my thing and I got to look out for me.
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure if I was ever that I gotta look out for me kind of person. But there are times that I should have been. Yeah, I'm way more forgiving these days. Like I see the broader picture now because I worked in it, and you know, like there are things that I used to find annoying when my directors would ask me, or things that they would say, and that would annoy me. Like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, and I'm just like, why'd you hire me? Did you watch my reel? Why didn't you know? You know, and then I find myself going, oh yeah, I didn't know they could do that. You know, and it comes from a good place. It's certainly a compliment. You know, it's nothing to get disgruntled about. Yeah, I feel sorry for my producers and directors sometimes. Especially when I work with, like, I just got through, I'm not going to name names, but I just got through working with a first-time director, or almost first-time director, and these actors were walking all over him. And it was his movie, and they just took it over and rewrote it and made sure that all their buddies were cast. And I was just like, oh, poor bastard.
You didn't like take him aside and you're like, hey, look, man, you gotta like put the hammer down. You gotta put these kids in their place.
I was not taking on those guys. They were assholes.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
I was just like, I'm gonna
gotta pick your battles.
Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, that was
I had a thought and it just went bye-bye. So
I do that all the time.
Yep. You know, I blame the pandemic. It didn't used to be this bad. Now I'm just like, what? Oh, it's gone. Nope. Whatever. No, I was gonna ask you something about what we were just talking about like, oh, when you were talking about I didn't know you could do that. I just think sometimes, and maybe I'm gonna ask you if this comes from that, is like, as a producer, and I know for me with even just the stuff I'm juggling, which is not a full film production, you don't have time for so many things. So like, maybe you don't do as in-depth of research as, somebody else might think you should, right? But you're like, nope, I've seen enough from this audition, or I've seen enough from the work I have seen them do that I trust, that I have an instinct that this is going to be the right person. And so they're just going on the instinct. And is that kind of what you were talking about?
No, what I was talking about is like, well, yes, actually, like, it's, yes, you know, you've worked with this person, you've vetted them, you've seen their audition or whatever, and you know they're going to do a great job, but then they know the character so much better than you do, and they take it to a different place that you never, imagined that they would, or, they just go way over in a different personality that you've ever seen them in, or I don't know, they start singing or something, just sometimes people surprise you in the best ways, and it's just like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you were like a stunt person. I don't know exactly, or you just see them in comedy roles and you cast them in a comedy role and they show up and give it the heart that the film needed, that you didn't even know the film needed until they did it, and then you're just like, yes.
Well, isn't that always the best though, when you see an actor kind of go to that place you didn't think they could go? I mean, it's also like, because I mean, for years it was always like the comedic actor who suddenly gets like really serious, like Robin Williams being from like Mork and Mindy to doing Good Will Hunting, like that you see someone expose that side of themselves, and it's like by the time Robin Williams did Good Will Hunting, he'd had plenty of dramatic things under his belt, but that first time you see them kind of give you that, isn't that like that's like, this is why you do this, is to see them kind of reveal that different side. That's, to me, that's always like the best stuff about working with actors, is when they show you something you didn't know they could do.
Absolutely. It's the best.
To me, that was George Clooney in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh yeah.
I didn't care about George Clooney.
That's a really good example. Yeah, though.
As soon as I saw him in that, I was like, I love you now. Like, I love you. And then seeing The Rock on SNL, that was when I was like, oh, I see. Okay.
So you weren't a big wrestling fan before?
No. I'm not a wrestling fan. And also I hadn't really seen him in anything like movie wise, except, I think I'd seen like Fast and the Furious or whatever, but like, yeah, I didn't care about him. And then I saw him be funny on SNL and I was like, oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. It's like they're movie stars, right? And you don't really know why, and you don't really get it. And you're like, oh, I know so many people who would do that better. But then you see what made them famous. You see just how brilliant they are. You hear them in an interview and realize that they are so different from the characters that they play, and that it really is phenomenal acting. Just like, yeah. It's
just
amazing.
Finally get a chance to come out of things, right? Like you were saying, like, to surprise you. They finally get a chance to surprise you, because in this industry, you get typecast for so long. And when you finally get that opportunity to do that thing, that shows off some other side of you, that's when people can go, oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to cast the person that wants to play that role. You don't want to get like, I don't care if they're super famous. You don't want to get somebody who doesn't really want to do it, but they'll do it for you, I guess. You don't want that guy. You want the person that's just like, oh, I got so many ideas.
Right, because you can always kind of like, file them down, but if you get someone who's just kind of just showing up for the paycheck, it's hard to talk them up into it, versus the person that's like, I want to do this and I want to do this, and you're gonna be like, okay, well, let's do maybe these two things, and if those don't work, then we can try the other 15 things you've got in mind. But it's always better to have the ability to subtract than have to add.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to get Nicolas Cage on this show anytime soon, but I hope that you can go work with Nicolas Cage and then come back and talk to us about, because I would love to hear about how much enthusiasm he brings to his work, because I think that's what we're talking about, right? Is like enthusiasm for the role.
Yeah, somebody who's inspired by it. They just simply should be. I mean, those are the ones I book. The ones where they bounce off the page, and you're like, I know what I'm gonna do. It's yeah. I'll definitely I'll text you guys first when I get cast in a Nicolas Cage movie.
Right. We will share it, and I'll say, look, she made it. And then you can come back with your crazy Nicolas Cage stories.
So
I got one from back that's like indirectly from like a trip I went to in New Orleans, but Nick has probably hopefully has those days behind him, and we don't want to rehash that on the show.
Nah.
Let's just leave that be.
So I want to ask though, Hannah, was there a particular role, like out of all the roles you've ever played, what was the one that you most were like, I am this, I am so excited to play this, that it leapt off the page at you like that?
There have been a few. Let me think. So the movie The Unwanted, it's a very unusual script, but the character had so far to go from the beginning of the movie to the end that I read it and I was just like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. This is going to be okay. I'm going to just go for it. And so I like one of the things I did was, she it's a rite of passage sort of. She goes from being a woman in her 20s, but behaving much like a much younger person. And so even with my voice, I started out with her being slightly, higher pitched and more mumbly and more my mom would call it can't say boo to a goose kind of personality type, then slowly building this like slightly deeper voice, more empowered, more more of a woman's voice by the end, like stuff like that. It's super fun. Pepper's Place was a pilot I did with Molly Coffey and basically everybody, all my friends in Atlanta. And that was a musical. And she actually wrote the character based on me, which is really funny and kind of not flattering a little bit in some cases, but whatever. It made sense. I see it. Anyway, it was so much fun. And, oh my gosh, that was one that I truly, truly enjoyed. And, let me think. Oh yeah. I just got through playing, the dominatrix in this film called Demonatrix. We shot it up in Seattle. I think the trailer's about to come out in the next few days. And that was one that popped off the page for me. Just like, I didn't think my character was the most interesting character in the story, but I knew places that it could go and I wanted to do it so badly. And it was great. It was so much fun.
Well, piggybacking on that, now as you're kind of getting out there, doing more and more directing, is there a certain like type of movie, or just to give an example, like a certain movie, like I would love to make something like that, like as far as like, what are your director goals?
Well, I would like to have complete control as a director. I think that I had to make too many compromises. I would prefer not to have to do that as much, because I was hired to do it. Like, I think I'd like to produce and direct my next feature, if at all possible. And I think it is possible. Since producing Bunker Heights, I feel confident that I could do that. I would like to do something, perhaps, I would love to do a Western, not gonna lie. I really want to. I've never done one, and I think it would be so much fun. I know the horses would be dangerous and stuff, but I still want to. I would like to do more dark comedies. That's really my favorite genre. And I don't think I can be any more specific.
Just do it. Just get it out there and just, cover all the bases.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite dark comedy, like TV show or movie?
I just saw this last night, King of Comedy.
Oh.
That was so good. I can't believe it took me so long to watch it. It was so good. I mean, it was basically the Joker, only better. Like, it was.
Yeah, that's one of the ones. Of course, they cast De Niro, I think, for part of that reason, because that's what inspired it.
It was so good. Oh my gosh! Of course, but I mean, like, still, it was amazing. It's not really a comedy, but I also just saw this movie called Mute Witness. Have you seen this movie?
Mm-mm.
Okay. If you can get past the very beginning of this movie, the very beginning of this movie is horrifying, gratuitous, upsetting, all the feelings, all the upsetting feelings. But if you can get past the very beginning, it's needed. The rest of it is just a great time. And it was just so well done. I recommend it, checking it out. I think it's right up there with one of my favorite films now. Just thinking about it. And the lead is mute. And it's just so well done. You guys should check it out.
Cool.
And I also, actually, to answer your other question, I just saw the movie Spasms for the first time with Oliver Reed. And I really like misunderstood monster movies. And I loved that movie, like loved it all the way up until the very end. Like it has like cult leaders and the occult and cannibals and a mysterious monster and just a love interest, everything, weird dynamics, wonderful characters. Everything's great all the way up until the very, very end. And then it just goes pooty, just straight down the toilet. Like, I don't know. Because I was just like, this is going to be my new favorite movie. And then the end was so bad. So I looked it up, and it turns out they completely lost funding. So they just did whatever. And that is a movie I would like to remake, or I would like to see somebody remake it, because I want to see the end.
Right. I feel like that's the thing. Like, Hollywood always wants to remake the good movies. I'm like, but then there's a bunch of other people like, no, go find the movie that should have been good, but for some reason wasn't, and now remake that.
That would be great. I like that idea.
I'm all for it.
There are so many movies I could add to that list. And
what? Just name a couple. I'll check them out.
Well, Aragon for one, which is, fantasy.
Well, that's a big franchise. So I figure like that one, you just got to let some time pass. The same like what they just did with Dune. Like they did it in 1984, and
right.
David Lynch just at one point just kind of said, "Fuck the story, I'm doing my own thing." And now like they waited 20 years, and this was like, okay, now we're going to try to actually do the book this time.
Well, and like they did that with a series of unfortunate events, because the movie was not very good, and then they did the TV show, and the TV show was great, right? They did that with a Golden Compass. The Golden Compass.
Yeah.
That movie also not great. TV show much better.
His Dark Materials, right? That's that series. Yeah,
one of my favorite series of all times.
You really like fantasy stuff?
Somewhat, not like the hard fantasy stuff. Not hard sci-fi. Not hard fantasy. I like the fun. I like the more Neil Gaiman-esque and more fun stuff. But those are the movies that come to mind. Like, another movie that was absolutely terrible, which is video game, was Prince of Persia with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, well.
It had
as
the
much
best
as I like
cast.
Jake Gyllenhaal, he probably shouldn't have been cast in that role.
We're not getting the rights to any of these, though. You got any that I can maybe afford the rights to?
I feel like if I'm going to do something like that, it's like I've got to find a movie that I kind of like. I mean, that's my wife always gets on me like, why do you watch some of this crap that you watch? I'm like, I'm sitting here, I'm taking mental notes. I'm like, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. That goes. And then, because I watched some movie once, like back during the pandemic, it's one of those things like you were only watching it because you're stuck at your house and like you couldn't go anywhere. So it's like, okay, it's kind of like watching a movie on a plane. Sometimes the thing that like you wouldn't normally watch suddenly gets really fascinating because you've got nowhere else to go and nowhere else to be. But I found this movie on Netflix. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's one of those things like, you know what, with a better budget and maybe like some better production design, this could be really hot shit. And it's like stuff like that. I'm always kind of looking out for certain movies. It's kind of like, I'm kind of rewriting it in my head as I'm going along.
I just think there's such instruction in watching bad work. Like, there's so much to learn from watching bad movies. And I watch bad horror movies all the time with my friend Ryan. And we've watched some real doozies. Like, you know, even ones that are like very famous. It's like, oh, this is not good. But recently we watched a couple that were very campy, that were older, and that were so fun. Like, they were so, like, production wise, not great, but like, have you ever seen Dead Alive? It's Peter
Rings a
Jackson.
bell.
It's
Who is it?
directed by Peter Jackson, like back pre-Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson. It is my friend messaged me and she was like, oh, you like horror movies? Here's a suggestion. You should watch Dead Alive. She's like, it is the most disgusting. She's like, it's so gross. It's so disgusting, but it is so funny. And I was like, okay, I'll watch it. And I was like, you know what? Of all the horror movies we've watched over the last, I don't know, 4 years since the pandemic, that one's in the top 10 for sure, because of how ridiculously over the top. It's like anytime you think it's reached peak disgusting, no, it hasn't. They'll outdo themselves.
Oh, I've got one for both of you. Now you might come back and curse at me afterwards, but my brother is like the king of finding like weird, like borderline unwatchable movies. And he found this movie that was made back in the day. It's on Tubi. I think it's called Shrunken Heads.
Okay.
It's like, what happens if Disney made like this borderline, I mean, I don't know, was this supposed to be a horror movie or a comedy or what? Like, this one's like, I'm thinking, I don't know if there's enough drugs in the world I could take to make me get to the place where I could write something like this. Like, literally, like, these three boys are like gunned down by some 1950s style gang in like New York, and then this voodoo guy comes along, shrinks their heads, gives them superpowers, and unleashes them back out onto the street gangs.
Okay.
I
would watch that.
Right on. Tubi.
I will look forward to hearing your opinions about this.
Wait, what was it called again?
Shrunken Heads.
Shrunken Heads. Adding it to the list. The other one was called The Lair of the White Worm, and it stars...
That's a really famous one, though.
Yeah. Hugh Grant. I'd never heard of it. Out of all the horror movies I've ever seen, I'd never heard of it until recently. Hugh Grant and Peter Capaldi. And it is super campy. It's like MST3K level campy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
I think we need to introduce Hannah to Christopher Mim as well.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk some more about that after this. We could do this part forever. So,
True.
But we're coming up to the hour. So tell people where they can find you online if they want to add you or just, follow along with whatever you're doing.
All right. Yeah. I have a website. It's hannahfierman.com, and I'm pretty boring. I'm Hannah Fierman on everything except for X, which I'm Hannah Rose Firm, but I don't really go on there anyway. So really, it's Instagram is the only thing that I really check out these days. And but whenever I have anything coming out or anything newsworthy, I will post it on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you for having me. This has been great. It's a pleasure, guys. And just I'll let you guys know when you can finally see Dark Circles.
Hell yeah. That will be all for this episode. To keep up with the show, follow us on social media at ScratchClawPush. If social media isn't your thing, you can contact us at scratchclawpush@gmail.com. To learn more about the show, visit scratchclawpush.com. This podcast has been a Carcutta Media production. This recording, or any portion thereof, may not be reproduced or used in any manner whatsoever without the express written permission of the publisher, except for the use of brief quotations in review. Copyright 2024 by Carcutta Media, LLC, all rights reserved.